is that I encourage us all to look at things from like an angled kind of paradigm where adapting to things doesn't necessarily mean uh, 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 safety and comfort, or creating the barriers necessary to protect ourselves, but also that gives us the opportunity to look into the future, make change, and grow with it into a brand new world, into a brand new scenario. Why do I say this? Well, 7-8 months ago, as the board, with me brand new in the presidency, we were iterating how the chapter would look as the year progressed. Um, we never thought that we were going to be where we are today. We had the drive, we had the intention, we had the desire, but we were walking on a totally different road. I am so happy to report that 7 or 8 months after the onset of COVID, we have been able to take the chapter into a direction that has been, for the most part, extremely successful. And that in a couple of months, when I turn in my presidency, I will have accomplished what I felt was my second most important objective, and was to leave a solid, poised for the future, well put together board that is going to be able to carry on with those things that I have brought to the picture that are good, and will be able to improve on those things that perhaps I have brought into the picture that are opportunistic, or that can take improvement. So right now we have 55 people on the think tank, which is our second most important premier event of the year. I encourage you guys to be in touch on our website and with our board in whichever means you can, because coming up in a month or so, we're going to have our project management conference, which is going to be, again, uncharted territory, cutting edge, amazing technology that is going to allow us to support a multifaceted, multi-venue event in just one package. So even if just for mere curiosity, I encourage you guys to join us. It's ridiculously priced at about $55 per person. You get an amazing amount of PDUs for those of you that are interested in that. But to wrap it all up, I guess that the message is that no matter how uncomfortable, how uncertain, how difficult, or how testy things may be, I think that one of the things that we as a human, as a species, have once again proven is our adaptability. The fact that we will make our stuff happen because we want to. And having said that, it's again, it's a good transition to the type of relationship that we have developed with Gravity IT over the last several years. It's a strategic, strong partnership. Gravity IT has been with us in many, many events, and for many, many times and reasons, aligned with us in the way that we have the vision to the chapter and where it's going to go. And thank you so much, Stephen and the team, for being with us here today. And as a very personal plug to Gravity IT, I think that they are very unique in their model because they're very dynamic, and they have kind of a spice or essence to their formula that is not easily found on other organizations of the like. So thank you everybody for being here today. I'm honored to be sharing this time and space with you. Some of you, know that I hold you dearly. And Stephen, thank you so much for being our strategic partner today, in the past and in the future. And I hand it off to you for your words. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Gus. And it's a pleasure to be here. As Gus mentioned, I'm the co-founder and chief operating officer of Gravity IT Resources. We are a local IT staffing company that started here 2015. Our secret sauce, so to speak, is our focus on referrals to find great people. So all of the statistics basically show that the best hires are referrals. But if you look at the numbers deeper, only 7% of the folks that are typically being considered for an open position are actually referred candidates. So what we've done is built a model that really puts referrals on steroids. So we share a percentage of our of our perm fees if it's a direct hire position. And if it's a contract role, we'll actually share 1% of the contractor's pay rate for as long as they're in the position. So you get a passive income check from us every single week. And then we actually throw some technology on top of it. We have a SaaS platform that uses AI and machine learning to proactively solicit referrals from over 1 million IT candidates across the United States. And so that's sort of our secret sauce. One of the reasons we've been able to grow from my partner, Rick, and I, and one recruiter, Caroline Ruffin, who many of you may remember, to 3 offices, opening a 4th in November across the United States, and Inc. 500 2 years in a row. So that's our little deal. If you guys need help finding a position, or if you have positions to fill, we'd love to help you. So Gus, again, thanks for the introduction. It's an honor to serve as the moderator again here for the South Florida PMI Think Tank. The theme for today's panel discussion is driving success in a changing world. And we have a really accomplished group of panelists here that are going to be happy to share their knowledge with you today. What I especially like about the panel today is the varied viewpoints and the perspectives that they can offer. So without any further ado, let me introduce our panelists. We'll start out with Rafael Santos, who is the Chief Technology Officer for eBuilder, which is a Trimble company. Rafael recently led eBuilder through its $500 million acquisition by Trimble and has over 15 years of experience driving technology and organizational strategies to achieve business objectives. So welcome, Rafael. Also with us today is Amanda Glickstein. Amanda is the Senior Director of Enterprise Planning and Communication at Southern Glazers Wine and Spirits. Amanda has spent the better part of the last 5 years actually focused on transforming IT to meet the changing needs of the business. So we're looking forward to getting her insights. And last but certainly not least, we have Steve Reed with us. Steve runs the optimization and agility teams for, drumroll please, Ultimate Kronos Group, UKG. I believe today is the first day of that official new company name. So congratulations to Steve and the team. That was a big merger that has been consummated. Steve has been with Ultimate for, or I should say UKG now, for over 20 years, and previously served as the VP of Software Development. He is also the co-founder of the Lean Agile Summit and is one of the world's most foremost experts on agile software development practices, including Kanban. So welcome, Rafael, Amanda, and Steve. Happy to have you here.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Fantastic.
Happy to be here.
Great. So I always like to, we have 3 really accomplished senior executives, and we don't want them to just seem like, wooden figures up there on the screen. So I like to get personal to start off with. So I'm going to give a little ice-breaking question here to my team, and we'll start off with you, Rafael. The question is this: what food did you dislike or maybe even hate as a child? And maybe share the story. Do you still dislike that food, or have you changed?
So Steve actually knows me very, very well. Steve Reed. We worked together at Ultimate Software for many years. So he gets an answer which is correct, which is chocolate. I don't like chocolate. I never liked chocolate. But the answer today is actually not that one. I'm from Puerto Rico. And from somebody from Puerto Rico, you're supposed to eat rice and beans, so specifically these red beans or these little peas on what is called arroz con gandules. And when I was a kid, I couldn't understand why anyone would like to eat beans. And for many, many years, I avoided them. I pushed them out. But as I grew up, I actually found that they were actually quite delicious, and that actually changed. So
great. All right, Amanda, let's hear your childhood food phobia.
Okay, so growing up with a Jewish Nana, I was forced to try all foods. Some of you may be able to relate to that. She'd tell me I had to try the once, and if I didn't like it, I wouldn't have to eat it anymore, but I'd have to try it at least. And my Nana was on to something, because I think I literally ended up liking everything. I cannot think of a food I didn't like and that I don't like this day and age. So I like everything. You can try me. Maybe someone could call something out, but I think I like all foods.
Good for you, Amanda. That's exciting. That's impressive. All right, Mr. Reed, it's your turn.
So as a child, a couple parts to this. I hated oatmeal. My mother didn't understand that kids' portions were different than adult portions. So not only did I hate oatmeal, this giant bowl of oatmeal was put in front of me, and not the like modern little pouch of like maple syrup oatmeal. I mean the old school on the pot oatmeal with a giant spoon in the bowl. And I hated it so much that one Saturday morning I was sitting at the table, just trying to figure out what I was going to do with this. My mom kept going by, yelling at me because I wasn't eating my oatmeal. And she went down to do laundry, and I stood there and I was like, I have to get rid of this oatmeal. And I turned and I looked, and I grew up in Canada, so the heat registers came out of the floor, not like the Florida houses. And it was the perfect, like, oh my God, the heat register is right there. I'm going to lift it off and I'm going to pour the oatmeal down there. And I did. And I started doing this almost every day until one day she turned around and walked back in the kitchen and found me in the middle of pouring this oatmeal down there, screamed for my dad. He came, had to change the ductwork out in the house, and it was not a good day for me. And I still hate oatmeal to this day.
Oh man, now that is a great story. That is really, really good. Awesome. Okay, great. So now that we know that we've got some real human beings here with foibles and everything else, let's move to the meat of our discussion today. So again, the theme today is driving success in a changing world, which clearly we've been in since mid-March. So good governance requires great project management. This is certainly amplified in times of crisis and recovery. So the first question to the panelists, and maybe we'll start with you, Amanda. How does one practice servant leadership, or perhaps another leadership model in these challenging times to produce maximum results and deliver value?
That's a great question, Steve. And my first response would be to continue focusing on people, process, and technology. With our people, I focus on empowering them to make decisions within our guardrails, promoting resilience, creating a safe environment, fostering open communication, accepting graceful failures and swift recoveries, appreciating humility, and keeping teammates motivated by playing into their strengths and providing opportunity to learn from possible weaknesses. But there's also that reward factor, rewarding success, especially those achieved via positive experience. So as servant leaders, we set our strategy, we assemble talented, dynamic teams, and we make sure that they and are committed to shared objectives, as well as have the capabilities and environment that they need to be successful. As servant leaders, we're here to serve others, make sure there are no barriers, protect when there are issues, and help others achieve their goals. Because more than ever, the sum of our teams is more powerful than the parts, and out of sight is anything but out of mind. In the process arena, we all are working remotely, and strong governance and processes are ever more important, because despite being uprooted from our shared office space, we're still expected to work in harmony and deliver our strategic commitments and service objectives. So as we shift from a command and control hierarchy to a network of teams, I'm working to continue to empower others to make and implement decisions, which requires an established architecture for decision making so that accountability is clear and decisions are made by appropriate people at different levels. But lastly, I know I'm being long-winded, but lastly, in technology, I feel keeping our systems and business up and running is table stakes. That is what our IT organization's main priority is and must continue to be. But as we continue to focus on stability and ongoing support of our systems, we can't neglect, because we're humans and we need to evolve, thinking about how we can empower the growth, transformation, innovation of our business. So that's how we've been navigating through these unprecedented times and leveraging and capitalizing on that servant leadership approach to continue to motivate people in tough times.
Very comprehensive answer. Thank you, Amanda. That was great. That was awesome. Raphael, you want to weigh in on that question?
Yeah, absolutely. When it comes to looking at especially any challenging situation, I try to go back to first principles. And I'm a lean Kanban guy like Steve Reed. So I go back to the basic principles of lean, of respect for people and continuous improvement. And so I basically go back to that, and I try to look for contextually aware solutions to problems. So one of the things that I do is, you have to, in a situation like what is happening right now, which is, last time we have a global pandemic of this kind was over 100 years ago, which is pretty unique. You have to challenge all the basic assumptions, because you're assuming that everything is the same. Everything has to be followed the same rules and same processes. So you have to go and rethink how to approach it. And I'm going to use a specific example. In my case with my team, the biggest challenge is how apart we are now. There is no hallway conversation. There is no quick chat, going to the kitchen, right? There is none of that. We don't see each other anymore. So you have to become highly intentional in creating those opportunities to actually converse. And from a technology perspective, I have tried to use a little bit more surveys. I have tried to be create conversations when I can. I do have to be careful. I have one of my employees, former employees from Citrix. I reached out to him on Slack one day, and he said, that's great that you reach out, but just to let you know, in Citrix, when the CTO reached out, was because they were letting you go. So I have to be aware that the title does have some implications sometimes. But what I have been doing is asking the teams to try to engage more and more, and to ask for more feedback using whatever tools we have available, because those conversations that used to be so important and so critical are basically gone, because that common space doesn't exist anymore.
Got it. Steve, tell us your thoughts on, how you practice servant leadership or other leadership models in challenging times like this to keep the trains running and to keep the business growing.
Yeah, so from overall, I would say very similar structure to what Amanda described, very similar problems to what Raphael described. I mean, the thing I noticed right away when we switched over to everybody being remote, people were used to a certain level of separation from home and work. And now all of a sudden we had people at home who, they had young kids, and their young kids were so excited that mom was home and, was going to barge in the middle of a meeting, and they looked horrified, right? Like they didn't know what to do. They felt like they didn't know how to balance their life. So there was a lot of time getting on the calls with them and just letting them know that those situations were okay, and they didn't need to feel like they were letting the team down, or they were bad. They were, not doing what we would expect. Like, we had to give them that type of support to a point where then it got comfortable that they would just be on camera and hit mute when the kids came in, or tell us like, hey, I need a minute. So we did a lot of that at the personal team level. And then there was the overall, okay, we're now all remote. What do we and we've believed for a long time, like many companies, and spent a lot of money on building this amazing office space. What's the impact of being remote? Like it felt okay. It felt like we were productive, but how are we going to let the data tell us what we were doing? And so we started looking at our production data and examining what was going on. Not from I'll cover it later in the evening, but the results were actually fairly positive. But where it wasn't, the data wasn't used to like go in and say, hey, what's wrong with you guys? It was used to be able to go in and practice that servant leadership of what can we do to help.
Mm-hmm. Got it. And that's actually a great segue into the next question for you all is, what technological obstacles did you guys face as you tried to practice servant leadership, or whatever leadership model is, prevalent in your organization that you tried to, lead with? what technological obstacles did you face, and how did you overcome them? And so how did technology help you, or hinder you through this process? We'll go with Rafael first this time.
I think it was, we were very lucky at eBuilder, which internally we are called Trimble PPM. We got merged with another group who is based in Canada. So my team includes people, it's highly distributed. Because of the nature of my team being so highly distributed in Florida, Canada, California, Chennai, Eastern Europe, Latin America, we were already set up correctly, I guess, to working in a fashion where some people are working from home all the time, other people go to the office, but it's highly flexible, and so we were pretty good in that situation. The biggest challenge that I saw when the switch happened was mostly the two challenges: the communication breakdown in the teams that used to be mostly at the office temporarily for a short period of time. The managers were able to get that going because we live in a Slack, so that was easy for us to get going. But the team that was impacted the most was actually our user experience team. And the reason for that is that our user experience team travels a lot and meets face-to-face with clients and does a lot of work together with clients, doing co-creation sessions and discovery, trying to discover issues. And that was a major shift for them. So we actually have to go back and figure out, how do we do all the user experience work remotely now? And so we have to actually go back and look at what technologies tools were there. We end up evaluating a few, end up using Mural as a tool, and we collaborated that way. But the only team that I found that was highly impacted on our context was the user experience team.
Interesting. Let's go to you, Amanda. Well, what technological obstacles did you guys face in sort of executing your leadership model, and what have you used or done to overcome those?
Yeah, it's a really good question, and to think about an answer, I'm smiling because I do feel like our company acclimated relatively quickly to remote working conditions, and I found that COVID leveled our company's collaboration playing field in a sense. So universal remote working conditions brought geographically dispersed teams closer together and made us more comfortable having deliberate, productive working sessions over the phone, because we weren't able to have those hallway conversations anymore, like Rafael alluded to earlier. But with that said, there were opportunities in our technology arena that we did have to tackle, and this is enterprise-wide, but we had to make sure that our employees had the devices that they needed to perform their jobs at home. While most of our back office employees already had laptops, most did not have soft phones or even cell phone capabilities, possibly. So we deployed hundreds of laptops and soft phones within weeks in partnership with site and functional leadership to ensure our business didn't skip a beat in that sense. And we had to roll out more Zoom licenses to employees who were used to meeting face-to-face with colleagues and customers. And that required a lot of technical documentation, ongoing training to make sure that our colleagues were comfortable and confident leveraging Zoom. I think we take for granted, myself being in IT, we're very comfortable working with and within technology, but that's not necessarily the norm in a company like Southern Glazers Wine and Spirits, for example. But lastly, an unconventional technological obstacle presented itself, and I refer to it as an unbalanced work-life scale, as we rely wholly now on email, chat, and phone calls to speak with one another. Office hours have gone out the window in a lot of cases. So I do my best to be considerate of this with my team. Therefore, I encourage office hours for our teams to disconnect and maintain some semblance of a work-life balance during this difficult time. So that's another technological obstacle I think of as well.
Note to self, I guess I'm going to have to stop those 9 p.m. conference calls with my team.
Oh, that's painful.
Thank you for reminding me of that,
something's
Amanda.
on fire.
Steve, let's go to you, because I mean, you guys were undergoing a really crazy situation in that not only were you dealing with COVID, you're trying to merge two, giant, really successful companies with very powerful and award-winning cultures at the same time, and you can't get together to do that. So I imagine that must have been an interesting process. Maybe weave that into the technological obstacles you guys may have faced while you tried to do that.
Sure. So from a just ultimate software pre-merger perspective, very similar to Amanda and Raphael, we really were, from a systems perspective, set up to be successful. We had all of the communication collaboration tools we needed. That really wasn't a challenge. I think where we saw stuff start to break down, when we sent everybody home in March, I think the initial thought was we'll be home for a few weeks, right? So all of the workstations and all the engineers, everybody had laptops, no issue for us there. But all of their external monitors, which they all used multiples, were mounted to arms to the desk. So the initial message was, don't take any of that stuff home, just go home with your laptop. And after a few weeks, as we started to realize, hey, we're not going back to the office anytime soon, we kind of had to deal with that. So, there was the allowance to get external monitors for people to purchase at home. And then some more time went on, and you started to see people, you would be on video calls with them, and they'd be sitting in the most odd, awkward position, like, hey, you don't look very comfortable. Is everything okay? Well, my home internet's good, but it really only works from here. So I work here for 8 hours a day, uncomfortable. And sometimes I have to go outside because the time of day, the sunlight makes it, not great. So we really we weren't huge dollar amounts, but they were enough that we could make people's lives better in the period they were at home. And so we really went down that path to try to help people as much as possible. Back to the merger, you're 100% right. I mean, we were in the midst of closing this thing when we all went home. So, you're not allowed to do a lot of pre-planning until things close. So the pace at which things would come together as we tried to merge these two huge companies was really challenging for us. We would love to have got lots of people together in rooms and been able to work through stuff, but we just weren't able to do that. So, it's been certainly successful, but it's been a slower pace than I think people would have liked. And then, dealing with all of that, we use different systems. So while we had great collaboration systems and communication systems, and so did Kronos team, they weren't the same. So everything about setting up even meetings on different platforms was challenging for us. But we've now worked through all of that, just at a slower pace than we would have liked.
Wow, it's crazy. All right, let's move on to the next sort of set of questions here, which is, good leaders, great leaders know that you need to continuously learn. That's sort of, everybody knows that's really, really important. But great leaders also know when they need to unlearn the past to succeed in the future. So this question is, share with us some of your examples of how you had to rapidly adapt to the changing circumstances. Most importantly, identify what to stop, what to keep, and what to change. That is the key question here. So it's not just always being a continuous learner, but sometimes unlearning past activities or habits that don't serve you well or your organization well in the future. So let's start with Raphael with this one.
So for me, I think I'm still in the process of learning and deciding what to learn or not learn. One of the things that was really hard for me to let go, I like to have I like to know my team. I like to know the members of my team. So when it comes to onboarding, I conduct most of the training myself, and I like to do it face-to-face. And if that means traveling, I'll travel or they travel, but we all get in a room and we do training together, and we talk, and I have the chance to meet with them and have lunch, etc., and actually get to know them. And it was really hard that we were hiring new people. We actually have several people that came in, and I couldn't do my onboarding the way I like it. And it took me actually many months to let go of the idea that I'm going to be able to do this at some point the same way, and that I need to figure it out and redo something different. And eventually I did it. Eventually I went online and said, okay, what are the online tools that I will need for this? What are the things that I need to change on the way we do training so this will work out? And that's how I have been working through the process. And again, for me, it's just a continuous improvement cycle. So I'm now conducting a lot of those onboarding sessions, and I'm keep adjusting, making little changes here and there to try to make sure that I'm covering everything the teams need. And at the same time, I'm trying to challenge assumptions. So like I said before, I think you have to become in this new context very, very intentional about trying to connect with your team, because the casual connection is not happening anymore. So you have to be very intentional. And I have a debate with our human resources department, who they do the survey, and the survey is optional. I said, no, I think we need to change it to be required, because we are not seeing each other anymore. No, but that's not what the survey company says that you're supposed to do. I say, well, maybe in this context, which I doubt very much they consider when they build these practices, might not be the best idea. So we need to challenge and try different things. So I'm still in the cycle. I'm still trying to learn and unlearn certain things. And I'm probably going to continue, I'm sure, for a period of time, trying to adjust and adapt to each one of the new context, and how to deliver and provide the same information as I did before.
Right. Amanda, let's throw it to you. What have you guys figured out you had to unlearn or do very differently?
First, with any change, I start with personally accepting and encouraging the acceptance from others that change is constant and it can happen at an evolution or revolution pace, but it's inevitable. It's going to happen at any given moment. And instead of bracing ourselves, how can we can control our own mindset, and how can we take it on positively versus in a resistant fashion. But at the beginning of a change, I take a moment to reality test the situation and think about the as is to be landscape, to see where we've been, where we currently are, and where we're trying to go. But we're sometimes quick to start acting immediately before taking a second to really understand the status quo before we alter it and make a difference there. So I try to be honorable in my decisiveness, because someone will feel the effects of my decision to stop, start, or change the subject at hand. But with something specific, and I think that we can all relate to right now, it's not very, very complex of a scenario, but we've had to unlearn that being in person is more productive than being virtual. That is something that we've just had to overcome these last 7 months. But I believe that once we return to our office, which is as soon at Southern, I'll have to relearn how to be in person with people. I think I'm going to be extraordinarily socially awkward for the first couple of weeks. But I believe, just understanding and trying to apply an objective lens to a situation that involves a change could really go a long way. And there's always going to be emotions or subjectivity as part of the equation, but trying to compartmentalize that from a common good or a common goal, I think makes it a little more tolerable and successful.
Amanda, thanks for sharing that. And that is a really good point, is that, we have to remember the emotional aspects of all of this stuff, not just the objective, objective aspects of that. So well said there. Steve, what about you and your team and your organization? Anything in particular you guys found you had to unlearn or change based on the circumstances we face here in the last 7-8 months?
Definitely a couple things. One, easy tactical one, while we had a lot of remote people, remote teams before, video was not commonly used. So even if we were using those collaboration platforms, they were predominantly audio only. So, really having to go to all the teams and encourage them to turn video on so that people could see, each other's reactions and stuff. That was something we had to unlearn, that past behavior, and adapt to that really quickly. And that was an easier one. The second one, and you can definitely tell that Raphael and I work closely together for a long time in terms of how we approach stuff, right? So the agile coaching portion of my team, everything was in-person training. And we believed for the longest time that that was the only way to be successful doing that. So as we grew and had, teams in Canada or San Francisco or Europe or Singapore, we still held on to that, hey, this training needs to be in person. And then, you wake up in the middle of March and you're like, well, we can't really just keep this on hold. So we had to adapt very quickly and figure out how we were going to make those trainings as effective as they were in person remotely. And it probably took 2 or 3 to figure out how to not just conduct the training, but how do you keep people engaged all day long sitting at home on video.
Right.
So we had to deal with how to gamify the trainings to make that stuff more effective. But it adapted, and honestly now it's so great to know that no matter where we're geographically located, we can be effective at delivering training.
And it's almost like you knew what the question I was going to ask you next, Steve, which is related to Agile. So, obviously you guys are a hugely Agile organization. eBuilder is as well. I'm not as familiar with the Southern Glazer folks, but I imagine they're pretty Agile too. So the next question is related to that. For Agile teams used to being co-located, right, in the same office space, how did the team adapt to working remotely? And did you find productivity go up or down? I'll actually start with you on this one, Steve, because you did mention that you had some stats earlier about that. So maybe share that story.
Yeah, so Ultimate has always been comfortable with like the ad hoc remote situation, right? Like, hey, I have a delivery at home today, or I have a doctor's appointment where it makes more sense to be, at home versus drive in, go to the appointment and come back. We've operated like that forever. And then as time has gone on, we got more comfortable with hiring people remotely. But the core belief was still, we spend a lot of money making this amazing collaborative space, and we do that for a reason, because we get more productivity out of people all being co-located together. So, when we all went home from COVID, about 2 weeks after, once I realized we were going to be there for an extended period of time, I asked my team to start putting together some dashboards where we could look across all of the teams, and there's probably 60 to 70 of them collectively, and look at the metrics that we would expect to be predictive of, were we going to be able to meet the commitments we made? And so things like those metrics would be things like the amount of work we had in progress, the cycle time, what the throughput was looking like. And then I asked them, build the dashboards and go through and give me the high level thesis on what you're seeing. And they spent some time and they came back, and basically it was, at the end of the day, the thesis is, it looks about the same. And I was a little surprised. Like, I want to look at the data myself, and went through it. And, you saw some teams where they were a little more productive. You saw some teams where they were a little less. But if you looked prior to that history, you saw the same thing before COVID or not. It was just the normal ebb and flow of a team, not related to being remote whatsoever. So that we did that after being home for about a month. And then every couple months we'll rerun it. And I still hold that to be true, that we're not seeing any ill effect or major spike in productivity based on all virtual.
Great. Let's go to Raphael. What about you and your Agile teams at eBuilder Trimble? What did you see?
We have a very similar dashboard. As a matter of fact, I've been discussing it with the managers for the last week as we start working on our OKRs for Q4. So very similar. We look at the data, the same three metrics that Steve just mentioned. I mean, little slow, cycle time, work in progress, throughput. We noticed a throughput reduction in the month of April when the big switch happened, right? It happens at the second half of March. There was a reduction of around 7.5% from the peak. But if you look overall, it's stable. It just came back and now it's back at what it was. But the number, the percentages are really small. So we didn't experience we didn't experience any major fallback or anything like that, except for a small blip in a month. The thing that is different is that before COVID, we were consistently growing or improving our metrics. And what has changed is that our teams, some of them are changing, are improving, but a group of them, and the majority of them, have stopped improving. Just to give an example, we grew throughput by 40% the year before on all our eBuilder teams. This year, some of them doing it, but most of them are looking around 10% maybe improvement compared to the year before. And because we're in a continuous improvement cycle, we're expecting to see, always some sort of improvement. So it's become a little flat from that perspective. That part, we are now spending a lot of time with our management team to have discussions team by team to understand contextually what is the potential problem, and then pick a specific item. And again, we're very lean in that perspective. We just pick one thing, right? From an improvement kata perspective, what is the only thing that you're going to address now that you're looking to improve that metric, and what should be that improvement before you even start? And that's what we're doing right now to try to figure out. So that's the impact that we have noticed in terms of productivity. Now, our agile teams were highly distributed before. On purpose. There was no pure team that everybody was collocated in one room. They always have members somewhere else as well. So it forced them to become good at being distributed. So the environment actually didn't affect them that much from that perspective, except for that temporary blip when everybody went home and they're trying to figure out the new pattern now that they don't have to drive to the office.
Got it. Amanda, what do you guys see with your agile teams there at Southern?
So the teams adapted quickly, and overall productivity remained consistent. Plus, once we settled in and found our rhythm, our last two PIs were remote, and we used Zoom for big room presentations and announcements. And each team had their own Zoom for planning, and we used Teams for communications, sharing documents, etc. But same sort of results that Steve and Raphael referred to. Things weren't drastically diminished as far as progress made and objectives with the Safe Agile team. But anecdotally, the product owners perceived our remote PIs to be so successful that they're now questioning, which we're not going to pursue at this time, but questioning whether we should go back to big room planning if and when things return to normal. And that's obviously not a decision we want to make in an unstable time. But I think as far as perception goes, it has been rather seamless and been something that hasn't been such a painful experience that maybe some people hated it to be.
Great. Well, if I could sort of extrapolate from what we've learned here on this meeting about this particular issue, and if I can add in some color from let's just say dozens of other conversations that I've had with executives and teams about their team's performance through this COVID pandemic with everyone going remote. Universally, I have heard that everybody pretty much has done really, really well and much better than expected. And it reminds me back when I was in business school, we had our HR class was called Managing People at Work. And the nickname was called Managing People at Shirk, which is clearly not the case. I think that the takeaway from this is that in general, people are capable, they are excited to work, they want to do well, and it doesn't matter the situation, they will try to deliver for you. So I think that's a really encouraging thing that I've taken away from this COVID pandemic, is a greater faith in people's capacity to do well and to want to do well, which was great. So let's move into the final section of questions here, which is about resilient leadership. So resilient leadership is more relevant than ever, exploring how individuals, managers, and senior leaders can increase their agility in the face of our volatile and uncertain world. So the question is, tell us about the qualities of your leadership team that have promoted excellence in this time of uncertainty and loss. And so maybe we'll start with you again, Amanda.
Okay. And I love this question because it makes you reflect on who you get to work with every day, all day. And I'm fortunate enough to be surrounded by extremely talented people. A lot of who are on this call right now, like Lynn and Mary and Pedro and Gus. And frankly, they're better than I am in key areas of responsibility. But the individuals on my team are independently dynamic. But as a unit, they lean on each other's strengths to synergistically achieve a higher level of performance than could be achieved by operating individually. They understand that differences challenge assumptions, and assumptions are sometimes our blind spots. My team's also multidisciplinary and designed to act. They're empowered to gather information, devise solutions, put them into practice, and refine them as they go. And they're adaptable, reorganizing, expanding, or contracting as we learn more and as conditions change. But as a team, we understand the value of collaboration, transparency, and inevitable evolution. We also find bounded optimism in times of uncertainty and try to have fun because life is way too short. You're never going to get out alive, so try to see try to see the positive or the silver lining every day because we have to enjoy. We spend the majority of our time together with our team members, more than we spend with our families and our friends. So being able to really find the fun, even in tumultuous times, I believe is important, and that's what I encourage with my team too. So that's a little bit about their leadership qualities and us as a unit.
Awesome. Steve, let's go to you on that one.
So my leadership team, I'm fortunate that almost all of them have been at Legacy Ultimate Software for more than 10 years. So they have so much collective experience that a lot of the times when they see something going on in the company, they kind of already know the answer and the solution. But because we've gone through this massive growth over the last few years, we really have to help people and lead them to seeing the problems and understanding them, not just us coming in and dictating like, here's the solution to this. So our approach over the last probably 2 years or so has been to shift and start building out more and more dashboards and ways to show the business, here's what's going on, here's what things look like, what would you like to do with it? And we usually end up leading to the same place we would have, but how we approach the problem has been a little bit different. And so we've gotten really much smarter about that. And that wasn't just a COVID thing. That was a conscious decision, probably, like I said, 18 months to 2 years ago to start that approach as we had so many new people coming in. And that's really, we've been really successful with that. We also, in the times of uncertainty, I think some of the stuff that we have had to do, like just to give people a break. I think Friday afternoons, my team shuts down at 3:30 and we all get on a Zoom together, and it's a half debrief of the week and half, socialization. But that's really helped people stay, I think, a little bit grounded and connected. And yeah, that's the main stuff I would cover on this one.
That's great. Rafael?
So one of the things, and I believe our CEO, Ronan Tevi, has spoken as part of past panels. And if you know him, you kind of get a sense of his personality, obviously, and that kind of pervades the culture. And he tends to be a very humble kind of guy trying to get things done. So that's already the built-in fabric of the organization. You get that general sense. Everybody intrinsically wants to get things done. My team has been very lucky. We have a lot of things to do. Things like in sales have been a lot harder, right? There's a whole sections of verticals that are not selling anything, that are really struggling. But one of the things that we did as an overall executive leadership team is to start looking at the issue of dealing with the uncertainty, the general feeling that you get of not knowing what's going to happen or what is coming next, that makes the teams feel pretty personally. You are working, you're stressed out, but you're what you're not recognizing is that you're having that feeling that you don't know what's going to happen next. Like you don't even know what the next week is going to be. So that we try to go back and basically be very intentional again. I said, what are the things that we can do to help them? And one of the things that we did, it was a big push on making sure everybody takes time off, right? Make sure that you come up with a set of rules. One of the meetings I suggested, listen, I was reading about this company, it's called Intercom. They actually force everybody in the next month to take at least 1 week off. Not the same week, but everybody on the next month have to take the week off. So we came up with a plan very similar to that, right? Make sure that everybody takes time off. We're constantly delivering that message that you need to have time for yourself. And I'm trying to lead by example. I'm taking more time than I usually take just so people can see me, and I put it on Slack. I'm out. You're not going to see me for the next 2 or 3 days, right? Or you're not going to read me, I guess, more than anything. So that's one of the things that I think we're trying to do. Then it's just the good thing about us, and I know Ultimate because I spend time there with Steve, but is the framework of the Lean framework, right? The Lean framework that we have is a common language that we use in the technology organization, right? So we all speak the same language, and we're based on the same principles. And I was teaching that class online the other day, and I remember talking about Edward Demings and how he starts by the fundamental assumption is that people are intrinsically motivated to do good. That's the fundamental assumption you have to start with, right? And that's the basis of respect for people. So we go back to that, and what you have noticed is the teams adapted really quickly and they got it done. And as long as we gave them avenues to take a break, take a moment, we have been able to get now to a situation where I think they're really adapted to the new situation.
Fantastic feedback and information from all of you guys on that question. So we started with a personal question. We're going to sort of end with a personal question, and then hopefully be able to take some questions from the people that are outside the panel. So we'll start with you on this one, Amanda. What was the best advice or career advice that you received that you did not act on and wish you did? Best career advice you ever received that you failed to act on?
Woof. My parents own their own business and always encouraged and advised me to do the same. I still think that is a great piece of career advice. I just have not acted on it yet. So that's what I'll add to this.
That's a good one, and I can tell you it's really freaking hard.
Yeah, but they say, please don't interpret this. I'm passionate and love what I do and where I work. But I've heard people say the worst day working for yourself is the best day working for somebody else.
I would say, yeah, I don't know about that.
Good. Okay, you disproved it.
Yes and no, 100%. So that's a great, that's a great one. Thanks for sharing that, Amanda. Let's go with you, Steve. Best piece of career advice that you received that you did not take.
So first job out of school was for Blockbuster. And, you know, for those of you guys who remember, Blockbuster was based in, their corporate headquarters was in Fort Lauderdale. And I had a boss who was, you know, approaching retirement. And always remember him saying to me, when you're in a company like this, take advantage of everything they have to offer. And what he was referring to was like, hey, there's training dollars, there's everything. Use them and use them well. And while I partially did that, I definitely will find myself now, you know, you read a lot of stuff, but like the getting out to conferences and, you know, you're constantly like making excuses of, well, I can't fit that in because of, you know, this reason or that reason. And honestly, as Ultimate grown, there's so much internal resources available in addition to conferences that sometimes I feel like I haven't even heard about that before. So there's so much available, free training, free knowledge, plus, you know, the stuff that you can go to that the company is willing to pay for it. And I didn't take as much advantage as I wish I had.
Great answer. That's a good point, and that's great advice for really everyone on the chat today, because I'm sure that's true with many companies, that you have those resources, you need to take advantage of them. And we'll wrap up with you, Raphael. What great piece of career advice did you receive that you maybe didn't take but wish you had?
Yeah, it happened more than, actually maybe 10 years ago or so. At some point, somebody told me I needed to take a break. I was going through a very difficult personal situation, and I was just becoming my job. And I didn't take the advice. I just stayed. I just kept doing, and I kept burning myself out. But I didn't do it. And then it took me years to actually realize the mistake. That was one that I certainly regret.
Awesome. Thank you. And thanks to everybody for being vulnerable and authentic there. That was really great. So I'm actually going to turn it over to Paul. Paul, I think you've been collecting some questions from the audience. So if you'd like to maybe let's pick out one or two of those and ask it to the panelists. So I'll let you do that, Paul.
All right. I've got a question from Alex I think I'm saying that right. And he's basically asking, in the companies that the three of you work at, where has this leadership to change come from? Has it been organic? Is it top down? Is it, you know, just ad hoc because COVID happens and you just have to run with it? Where did the change to kind of go virtual come from? And who was the driver?
So Steve, why don't you answer that one first within UKG?
Yeah. So in terms of purely the COVID change, like that was literally hey, here's a warning for you guys. Probably in the next couple of days, we're going to shut the office down. So it was a, you know, top-down decision to close the office, which forced everything else. Now, they were not prescriptive in any way other than making that top-level decision of we're going to shut it down. Everything else was sort of a, you know, grassroots to mid-manager level to go implement how to make that successful. But the decision to go virtual was a top-down level decision from really it was pre-merger, but the working group was already assembled between Ultimate and Kronos, making that collectively together.
Raphael?
So we are part of Trimble, and Trimble is a really large conglomerate with offices in more than 40 countries. So the corporate office actually has great facilities. So they implemented a policy. They were already working on policies because we already were dealing with the situation in Asia before we even have to start looking at what then in Europe and then now in North America, which was kind of how things were spreading at the time. So they already have a plan, and as soon as certain numbers, they have a dedicated team. And as soon as certain numbers were hit, they started closing the offices on those places, and then they established a combined organization with the corporate and local entities for the different locations. In our case, mostly HR and IT participate with the Trimble corporate side to figure out when the return to office is going to happen. What is going to be the phases? And they created a phase approach and a set of criteria. And we actually tried to come back to the office when things were getting better in Florida. We roll out phase 1, which was a very small group of people, and then we have to completely go back again. And so we have been getting guidance from the Trimble corporate all along regarding the office itself. In terms of policies, like what I was mentioning about getting people to take more time off and things like that, those are happening within our organization, right? We're having discussions at different levels of leadership. People are making suggestions, and then together, the senior leadership team, we come together, have a conversation, and start discussing rollout and things like that, and just make them happen. And that's kind of the main groups, what has been happening. The good news for us, like I mentioned at the beginning, is we were already highly distributed, so it was not that difficult for us to start switching, just minor things to do. And we mostly trying to focus on, from an executive leadership perspective, it was just a matter of focusing on the mental health of everybody, right? And making sure that everybody it doesn't burn out, things like that, doesn't lose that separation, which came also from Trimble. The head of our sector made a meeting with all of us, the leadership team, and said it's very important you take time every day. So I want every one of you to drive by example, set up what is the time that you stop working, and let everybody know, right? So things like that, we have been very intentional and very explicit about it.
Great. Amanda, what about Southern, the leadership that we talked about, top down, bottom up, sort of individual groups?
Yeah, as far as, sorry to interrupt, but as far as the catalyst that brought us to working remote back in March, it was COVID. It was a top-down decision. Each executive leader was able to sort of, manage the ways of working, how the messages got out and so forth. But it was certainly a top-down decision to transition us all to our home offices out of our shared office spaces. But interestingly enough, the company had always been considering flexible work arrangements and virtual collaboration, and COVID expedited that conversation around longer term virtual working options for roles that meet a set of criteria. So we're still working through those policies and procedures, but it was definitely the reaction to cases rising and the threat and risk to our health that forced us home quicker than actually creating a flexible working policy for all individuals.
Great. Paul, we have time for one more question. Maybe pick one.
All right, we're going to go to Tina. She's got a question for the panelists. She'll ask it.
Hey guys, Tina always has questions because that's what good BAs do. We ask the right questions. So I agree with a lot. Amanda, I come from regulatory compliance back in the day, and it seems that we're coming back through those processes going forward. So you definitely have the right mindset, but I want to challenge all the panelists and anybody on this call really, because it's challenging to transition from working on site and being virtual. We see that in the colleges because I'm a recent graduate at UCF. As an aged worker, I wanted to step it up. But the challenges to interview virtually are very high, higher than you guys' transition to be virtual. Now the expectations you have on us returning back to the workforce are, I can't even meet them, let alone exceed them, right? So what advice can you give us that are trying to rebuild in this new way? And as a good BA, I do stump many people, so.
So just to make sure I understand the question there, Tina, is it how do you successfully interview virtually? Was that the ending question, or
No, that's a little too generic, Stephen. So I think really, because we have been talking about the challenges that the workforce now is having to drive success, right? That's what this whole presentation was about. And how can we all help each other and lift each other to bridge that gap and still be productive? So I guess the advice is, are those are those skill sets that are being used today to help bridge your teams to keep going forward in the new environment? How is it that you can help us as resources to help lift you to that in that setting? I guess that's a better way to say it.
Like how do leaders support their teams to be successful in this new world? Is that sort of a good synthesis?
No, because that's internal. We're talking about bringing in external resources, those new resources, right? And how is it that we can show the value that we can offer as open candidates without coming across too aggressive, as I'm sure I'm coming across aggressive right now, but it's not intention. I'm just watching the clock and seeing how I can get some feedback from people and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
So is the question is how do you onboard new people successfully into an organization under conditions like this?
Yeah, that would be the end result, right? And it's more about what are those expectations that leaders have on virtual interviewing in that whole process versus when we had in person, because it's quite different.
Yeah. How do you differentiate yourself as a candidate, going after an opportunity in a company, having to, have a panel interview via Zoom and still come off personable, the appropriate level of assertiveness at that time, and being able to bring, your innovative ideas to the role that you're interviewing for.
Amanda's got it right on the head. You hit it right on the head. However, let's add in that layer of complexity, right? Of that, all I heard tonight, wonderful things. I learned about what a servant leader is, right? Those are good things. But it's like I hear that you guys are all putting your arms around your team and saying, it's okay, guys, but are you, that's not even a factor. It's almost like those of us that are trying to knock on your door and saying, I'm here to help, right? I'm here to help. It seems that's the challenge, right? That's the gap.
But this is Gus. I think that you present that Amanda was able to kind of hone into your question. Perhaps at this time we should allow our panelists to give you some answers for the benefit of us all, right?
Mm-hmm.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah, so I'll start, Tina. As we start to dip our toe back in the hiring game and start to, as our companies have stabilized and we're looking on the horizon for opportunities in the project space and planning for what we can deliver in the years to come, as opportunities arise and postings are set, we're coming at interviews from an angle of it being not necessarily uncharted territory, but a different dynamic now. So with candidates, external candidates interviewing for roles in a company that, like you described, have really, at times experienced trauma together and are tighter than ever. I think you have to approach it with a sense of empathy, understanding, what a company has gone through. Everything is researchable at these times. Come, doing the research, trying to see where the company's been, where we currently are, and if there's, news on where we're looking to go. Understanding the in and outs of the role and even what's above and beyond the responsibilities of that role and those differentiating qualities that you could bring to that capacity. And I think, flexing an amount of assertion, creativity with your answers and showing that you can not only problem solve and provide real-time, real life examples to scenarios that are presented to you can really go a long way. And it's I just want you to feel like you're not in an uphill battle going out for jobs as an external candidate. They're posted for a reason, and we're looking for fresh perspectives and the energy that you exude too. So as long as you come in confident, and present your own flair to what you think you can achieve with that role, there's no stopping you in that sense. And that's what I would suggest to that sort of opportunity there. And then onboarding is a whole different game. We're trying to create virtual onboarding so that the entire enterprise can experience the same functional lessons and cross-functional understanding of how our entire enterprise operates. And I believe having a virtual onboarding program like that is actually, like I referred to earlier, leveling the playing field as far as onboarding, where some people in certain markets got a different experience just because of their geographic location versus others. We're trying to hone in and really create a fair or a universal experience with onboarding. So that's been, I think, a positive outcome as far as getting our external resources up and running to be an asset on day one.
Great. Thank you, Amanda. That was a terrific answer. I think we're ready to move on to upcoming events.
Sue, before we get into that, can I just real quickly thank, Steve and Amanda and Raphael for just, number one, donating their time tonight. We're all busy, and we really appreciate you guys taking the time to spend with us tonight, number one. Number two, thanks for sharing so many insights, because I learned a couple of things tonight that I did not know before that I can apply to our company. So thank you for sharing your expertise as well. And thank you to PMI for giving us the platform to do this. So that's all I'd like to say.
It's all our pleasure.
Yeah, it's an honor to be able to share this time with you guys and to be able to truly hear so many incredible insights that only make us better professionals in the short and longer term. And again, if I wasn't open enough thanking the panelists tonight, thank you all three for having been here with us today, and for not just allowing us to sponsor such an opportunity, but also for allowing us to have a look into who you are as individuals and professionals, and into the local organizations, which so many of us would love to be parts of. So thank you so much.
Thank you for inviting us.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, Sue, take it away.
So we have some really cool events coming up. In this month, we have two biggies besides this one that we just hosted. We have a pre-party project management conference kickoff. So this will be a party before the actual conference the night before. There'll be some training, some networking, and some entertainment by James the musician. I think a lot of you folks have already seen him. If you haven't, you're in for a real treat.
Do not underestimate that, okay? When I went into the first event with him, I said, really, James the musician, virtual, amazing. I loved it.
Agreed, it was fun.
A lot of laughs, a lot of laughs. I left there and my cheeks were hurting. So we hope everyone can attend that. The next day is the conference. It's our annual PMC, our Project Management Conference, an all-day event. Typically, we host it at the Signature Grand. This year, it's going to be virtual. It's going to be really, really cool. We have a special platform that we'll be using that will be supporting this type of conference. We have a fabulous keynote. His name is Drew Tarvin. He is hysterical. He's engaging. He's entertaining. highly intelligent. You guys are going to love him. And a lineup of 9 other speakers with some really cool, relevant topics. We also
And-
made room for a panel as well.
I'm sorry to interrupt you. And I think that perhaps one thing that we cannot afford to leave out is the fact that the main topic of the event is the project economy. Something close and dear to us, something that propels our roles in organizations to the very top and front of the line as the main enablers, contributors, and executors of our organizations' futures and the execution of their strategies. So as we were brainstorming what the main topic of the program should be, we were looking for something that really would deliver extreme value to our membership, and we all unanimously felt that truly the project economy couldn't be any more relevant at this time.
Absolutely. Thank you, Gus. And then lastly, we have a year-end party. It's a virtual event. It's a surprise. So that's all that I'm going to say about that. For tonight's event, everyone who's a member will automatically be awarded 1.5 PDUs. Those will show up in your dashboard in about 4 to 6 weeks, usually less, but that's the target time frame. And that's all we have for tonight. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, Sue. Can't wait to see you guys in person soon. Hopefully better
Yes.
sooner rather than later.